There's other things that we get into, like some of the power intervals and some of the continuous output type things that we do that will build on this cardiac output training to further build up the aerobic system to improve their power output, you know, later stages, later rounds, later fights in a tournament. It's more applicable the longer that they have to fight, but being able to display power in those states of fatigue is very important. And starting with this level of base cardiovascular development is essential to maximize that part of their training. So when it comes to cardio, that's usually the first thing that I look at. And then we also implement a lot of specific conditioning into the training. Once we get done with the maximal effort lift or the dynamic effort lifts and the jumps and things like that, we do a lot of timed work. One of the things that we do, and I learned this from Louis Simmons and Tom Barry up at Westside Barbell, we do a lot of their training in the belt squat because it allows us to build strength and it allows us to do specific energy systems conditioning simultaneously. And you can do a lot. There's so much variety that you can do in the belt squat machine. Basically, you're loading the hip belt on with a weight. If we're going for a long duration, I try to make the lightest weight they use their body weight on the belt squat, but if we're going for shorter durations or even guys that are going longer durations, we'll continue to pile weight on there as they adapt to this type of training. We'll use a lot of band tension on it and things like that, but we always start at about body weight for a lot of the longer duration movements, and I'll just have them walk. They walk, pushing out on their feet, building up the hips, building up the legs. It starts to condition they're breathing heavy, and we'll do loaded carries. They'll do pummeling exercises. They'll do various lifts. We deadlift out of it. We squat out of it. We do kettlebell training out of it. They shadow box. There's so many things that you could do. Just carry heavy med balls is great for the hips. There's just a huge variety of exercises that you can accomplish while doing this work in the belt squat. So that's a big thing that we do, and a lot of it's timed sets. We do a lot of timed kettlebell sets. Kettlebells are great because they're using basically your upper and lower extremities, clean and presses, snatches, big full body, compound movements, ground-based movements are essential, and we get a great adaptation from that as well. We do a lot of work in the sled where they're pushing and pulling sleds, doing rotational work with the sled, just dragging heavy sleds. They'll drag sleds for long distances. They'll drag heavy sleds for short distances. I mean, there's so much variety that we get between our sled and our belt squat. It's crazy. And again, when we talk about training efficiency, training economy, we want to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck out of a lot of those exercises. So a lot of the supplementary work that we do, a lot of the accessory work we do is in the belt squat machine. It's also with the sled. Anything you can do with dumbbells or a cable, you can do with a sled if you've got the proper attachment. So there's a lot of versatility that we get out of those two pieces of equipment. Some other essentials that we use as far as our equipment goes, in addition to the belt squat, we use the reverse hyper every session. Reverse hyper is key for lower back strength. We do a lot of reps, usually 100 to 120 per workout, 80 to 120 per workout. We usually start on about 50% of their deadlift or their squat max if we know what those numbers are. And we do lots of reps to get a lot of blood flow and a lot of circulation to the lower back, which is comprised mostly of connective tissue. I've talked a little bit about this in other videos that I've done and articles I've written on the benefit of the reverse hyper, but as the brainchild of Louis Simmons, one of the best machines. There's about 3, 4, 5 different models out there now, I think. I'd highly suggest if you don't have one for your training center or gym that you pick one up, because lower back needs to be trained and the neck needs to be trained, particularly with combat athletes. We use the GHR, we do a lot of glute ham raises, we do a lot of inverse curls. The band bell bar, which I talked about earlier, is critical. We use that quite a bit, whether we're doing presses with it. Sometimes we'll walk in the belt squat with it held overhead. My MMA fighter, he'll hold it like he's doing a curl, and he'll walk, and it's kind of strengthening his shoulders for his guard. He'll do those for minutes on end. So we use the band bell bar a lot in the sled. So those are some key pieces of equipment, as well as all the specialty bars that we use for benching and squatting. So those are some of the key pieces of equipment that we implement. A lot of kettlebell work. I think it's really important to mention that with all contact athletes, I really think with all athletes in general, but particularly contact athletes, football players, wrestlers, MMA fighters, jiu-jitsu athletes, it's critical to train your neck. A lot of people overlook neck training nowadays. They say it's not safe. Training, as Louis Simmons says, train both ends of the spine, the top end and the bottom end. The lower back and the neck are often overlooked with a lot of contact combat athletes, and you can't do too much work for those areas. So we do a lot of neck work, neck bridges, rolls, four-way neck work. We'll take the neck harness, we'll hook it up to a heavy band and do four-way neck with it, or we'll put it on a pulley machine, we'll pull against weights, drag the sled with your neck harness, do good mornings with the neck harness on, anything to build up the neck, just get creative with it, but do a lot of work for the neck, as well as the grip. So the neck, lower back, a lot of grip work, and of course a lot of abs, a lot of torso work is critical, and these things are done every day. Sometimes it's done, it's their homework. They go home and they do some of this stuff, or they do it on their off days as well, because that stuff, it recovers pretty quick. It's not highly stressful, and you can do it pretty frequently. One of the things too is jumps I want to mention. They do a lot of jumps, a huge variety of jumps. I read in Louis Simmons' Explosive Training for Jumping book, a good protocol is to try to hit 40 jumps twice a week. That's what we do. Some of the guys are working up to 120 jumps, so 40 jumps 3 times a week. But basically we're doing all kinds of jumps. We're doing jumps from our knees. We're doing power cleans with the bar from our knees. We're jumping from the knee, landing, jumping onto a box. We do a lot of box jumps because you jump up, you don't jump down. When you jump down, you're creating a lot of impact on the body and a lot of stress that should be minimized. So that's why we use the box jumps. You can jump up without the impact. See a lot of guys who do these high 50+ inch box jumps, and they jump off the box and they land on the hard ground, which kind of defeats the purpose if you ask me. So you want to make sure that you're not imposing those impact forces on the body year round. That's why jumping up is one of the best things that you can do. So we implement a lot of weighted box jumps with weight vests, with ankle weights, holding weights. There's just a huge variety in jumps that I learned from Louis up at Westside and through his writing. I got to give him a lot of credit for, because he really pushes jumps to a huge degree. So again, 40 jumps twice a week is where we start, and we just implement a huge variety of jumps, usually about once a month or every 6 weeks or so. They might take a max, like work up to as high of a box that they can, just to kind of see, or maybe measure a vertical jump, just to kind of see where their jumps are at. And if the jumps are going up and strength is going up, good things happen, because you're getting strong and you're still building your ability, increasing your ability to produce power. So those are some of the things that we kind of keep an eye on. We also do a lot of broad jumping. We might be kneeling, jump, throw a med ball, kneeling, jump, land, to a broad jump, or just bounding, single leg bounding, double leg bounding. There's so many different forms of jumping that you need to do a lot of variety in that regard to help develop the athlete all around. So those are a lot of the training methods and the tools that I implement with a lot of my combat athletes. Again, this is a ton of info, and everybody is their own unique case, but been seeing nothing but massive results with this type of training. So if you work with this demographic, I strongly suggest that you look at a lot of the work that they do at Westside Barbell with their fighters. Buy Louis' books. There's a lot of great info there. Heck, go up and visit. I've visited 3 times in the last year and a half. I'd like to go back again, maybe this time take the fighters up to get a little bit of work done up there, but there's so much that you can learn just by going and visiting and just going with an open mind and an open notebook. Take a lot of notes, ask questions. The information's worth its weight in gold. So I want to wrap up this video by talking a little bit about the kind of how we peak and taper going into a meet, because I mentioned that earlier, and it's something that's often overlooked and very important, because if you've got a big contest coming up or they got a big fight coming up, they need to be at their highest level of physical development. That's why you train, to raise your physical abilities, right? So I mentioned earlier that because they're kind of competing year round, that we only focus on a few different events. Some of the bigger ones, like the jiu-jitsu guys, it's their PANs, it's their world championships, or it's maybe a super fight or something like that if they have it, or a national tournament. We might focus on those. With the MMA fighters, it's a little different. We look at, he fights a couple times a year, maybe 2-3 times. So each of those we're going to go ahead and peak and taper for. So basically, I implement the 21-day peak and taper. Again, I learned this from Louis. He said he got this from a lot of the Soviet track and field and the Soviet sports manuals and stuff. But basically what we do is we do our highest, our most intense, highest intensity workout 21 days out, 3 weeks out. Okay, so that's our biggest workout. We'll take maxes. It's just going to be the heaviest workout that we do going into the competition. So then the next week we cut the intensity in volume by about 70 to about 75%. So we cut about 25% of the previous week's intensity and volume, and then the third week we further cut down to about 60% of the intensity and volume. So we have our highest week, we max out, then we take 75% the following week, then we take 60% the following week, and then we take that week off going into the contest. And they just do some light exercises. They do maybe some mobility work, some light cardio work, stretching, mobility. They do their tactical preparation at their martial arts academy going into the contest. So by doing that kind of taper, and our last heavy workout I need to mention is about 10 days out from the contest. So if the contest is on a Saturday, 10 days before that's going to be the last heavy session. We're going to hit some light sessions and stuff after that, maybe a little bit of low intensity work, some accessory work, things like that, some lower intensity cardio. But basically that last week is for the body to heal. It's to allow the body to transmute all the strength and power and explosiveness developed in the training prior. When you deload the body like that, when you taper over those 3 weeks and you deload the body, it raises the body's abilities on contest day. So that's what the highest peak and then that 3 week taper is all about, is to allow the body to transmute and realize all that general physical development into a higher level of physical preparedness. And I've done it with every athlete I train in addition to the fighters, and everybody says that they always feel ready to go on contest day. They feel well rested, the body feels healed. They're just by that point, because we train heavy all the time, they're just chomping at the bit to go out and just put out as hard as they can. So having some sort of taper, some sort of transmutation phase going into your contest is critical, especially your bigger contests. Now that changes a little bit for different sports, but we're talking about our combat athletes and our fighters in this video. So that's how we do it. My powerlifters also follow a very similar taper, just more specific toward their sport, which is the bench press, squat, and the deadlift. But that 21-day peak and taper works brilliantly. It's one of the best things that I learned from Louis Simmons as far as preparation when I was up there, and it's a really surefire way to make sure the athlete's prepared, and it allows you to control volume and control intensity going into a contest. So hopefully you found this video informative. Hopefully that answers some of the questions that people have sent me about our fighters and how they train, because a lot of our guys have been doing really well. Just to mention Chris Jones, who just got, I think, 2 or 3 gold medals at the Atlanta Open in the no-gi and the gi. He just recently competed at the no-gi pans this past weekend in New York City. He won double gold, won his division, and won the absolute. Early in the year, he competed at Pans in the spring in the gi, and I think he got silver or bronze in his weight class, but he went back and won the unlimited division, unrestricted weight classes. He won the gold in. He won gold at World Championships this year. At the World Championships this year, he's won a lot of super fights. I mean, the guy's just been on a serious roll over the last year that we've been back to working together. Ryan, our MMA fighter, won his last fight. He moved his ranking up to 4-0 now. He's doing really well. A lot of the other guys, Pete, Alex, Braulio, Jesse is another monster that we have in here. Cam, our little wrestler. I mean, all these guys are seeing the benefits of this type of training. Again, but they're all doing it for their specific individual needs. Jesse just won gold at the Atlanta Open. Braulio is one of our 155s right now. He's the one that's trying to move up a weight class. He's been noticing a lot more strength and power in his training. We're excited to see what he's able to do with his competitions when he gets back into competing at his new weight class. Cam, our high school wrestler, has come on really strong. He's weighing about 140, and we've built his deadlift up in less than 8 weeks. We've taken his deadlift from 200 up to 275. He's pulled over 300 in the rack pull. His strength is just going off the charts. He's gearing up for wrestling season coming up this fall, or this winter. It's just exciting to see what's going on with all these guys. But all our guys have been doing really well. They just keep winning and getting better physically. They keep getting better condition, and it proves that these methods do work if implemented properly. So we've seen a lot of success with our fighters and combat athletes. Hopefully, if you work with that demographic, that you'll be able to take some of these ideas and start implementing them into your training. Give me feedback on what you're doing. I'd love to hear what you're doing, what you've seen work as well. So if you got any questions, any comments, please leave them in the comments section below this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's video. Hopefully you got something out of it, and we'll check in maybe in another week or so. I haven't been posting a lot of videos lately. I've been really busy over the summer, so I'm going to try to get back to doing 1 or 2 videos a week. So until next time, stay strong and stay healthy.